Welcome to episode 82 of The Lowdown Show. I'm Neil Graham. Scott Calhoun has the most bizarre motorcycling history of any man I've met. Up until age 55, he hadn't ridden a motorcycle, and then for the next decade, he rode every paved road in America that held any promise for enthusiasts. Every single road. And then the co-founder of Butler Motorcycle Maps, which explains why he rode those roads, sold his BMW and moved on to competitive disc golf, what you and I would call tossing a frisbee. Scott gives us the skinny on those years of travel and gives us the best location in America to ride. And believe me, you will never guess where it is. But first, a few words from those who make the Lowdown possible. The Lowdown Show is presented by adbrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. With their new secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery. It's all built in. And eligible vehicle purchases are backed by up to $100,000 in protection. This is what modern car buying looks like. Get your next ride on eBay. eBay. Things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Yeah. What's your relationship with maps? Have you always been a map guy?
Oh, I was a pilot at one time. And many, years ago, 40 years ago or something. And I loved the maps that went with flying. There's so much detail on a map that's made for helping pilots get where they're going.
Right.
And so I love that. And also, I just enjoyed that part of it. And then also those National Geographic maps. I was such a fan. I love those things. They didn't have nothing on it had to make any sense, and I didn't have to know anything. It was the color and the texture. That parchment color. That National Geographic they just figured it out.
I haven't thought of this in decades. You're taking me back to being a kid. That's fabulous.
Oh yeah, I love those. I still have I have hundreds of maps here that not besides what we've made. I have many, many maps that I bought as a part of discovery of roads. In other words, that's part of how we find the roads, and we'll get into that, I'm sure. But I have maps that I've had for many years, National Geographic, these park maps, and there's a company called Latitude 40 that makes really incredible high quality maps that you can't tear them like our maps. They're sort of tear proof, they are waterproof, and they make them for small areas. They make maps like we make, but they make them for small areas. They're beautiful. And so I've got a lot of those things, and I don't just sit around looking at maps, but for a long time I did. When we started making these maps, I just sat around and looked at maps to figure out ways that our maps could look before we ever got it printed, our first map. And a lot of the ideas came from just looking at other pretty maps.
Well, take me through the process of how Butler Maps came to be. Now, you're not a butler by birth, but you were involved right from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I understand. What was the genesis? Where was the idea for doing this? Where did it come from?
I bought some historic silver mines south of Eagle, Colorado in 1996. And I bought them from a local real estate guy who was also a local lawyer. His name was Fred Butler. And Fred and I, as a result of just looking around, looking at real estate and all this, I was trying to buy some property up there, and I found these historic mines. There's 50-something acres of land and a bunch of silver mines that had been closed for over 100 years. A lot of equipment still in them. They're incredible. They're amazing places. Wow. And I've sold that just in the last couple of years. But anyway, Fred and I became just big buddies. We hiked around. We went fishing. We hiked. We just spent time together. And I started coming up there often and staying with Fred and his wife, Joyce. And really for 10 years, nothing about motorcycles came up. We weren't motorcycle riding. And I wasn't a motorcycle rider. I had never ridden motorcycles. I rode dirt bikes as a kid. So a lot of people are saying, what the hell? This guy makes these maps and never rode motorcycles. I started when I was 55. But Fred Butler had two twin sons, Court and his brother Justin. And of those two, I knew them pretty well as kids because when I started hanging around with Fred, they were like 18 years old. And so 10 years goes by, and in about 2007 or 2008, I noticed this motorcycle in the garage. I guess it had been there for a long time, and kind of came up like, Fred, you ride that thing? And he said, oh yeah, me and my son Court, we ride pretty often nowadays. And so that conversation led to them asking me to go on a motorcycle ride with them. And so in summer, I guess it was 2008. So I rented a 1200 GS motorcycle, BMW, and we rode. It was Court and his wife Tammy and Fred and I and a couple of other people that took this ride. We headed out of Eagle and rode over 500 miles to Cody, Wyoming, and then to a town, Powell, Wyoming, beyond that. So it was unbelievably entertaining to me. I had never experienced anything like that. Like I say, I'd never ridden road bikes to speak of at all. And we went through some of the most beautiful, the Painted Mountains, I forget what they're called, but on the way from Eagle to Cody, you pass through a lot of good stuff. And so we stayed there a couple of days. And then as we rode back from there back to Eagle, we go back out into Utah, and things only get better. Imagine that your first real long experience on a motorcycle was through Utah and the best of Wyoming and parts of Colorado.
Oh wow, that's a good. If you have to have an introduction, that's the one.
So within weeks or days, perhaps, I ordered a 1200 GS motorcycle, and we got to it then. And there's no conversation had been about making maps at this point. We just started riding and camping constantly. We rode all over Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, parts of Montana, just riding around. A lot of camping. When we camped, that was a big part of our experience, was Fred and Court and myself, and sometimes Court's wife Tammy would camp anywhere. We found Court was a big planner. He planned all of our trips. We would take off and we would have campgrounds set up a night in advance generally. Sometimes we had no idea where we were going to camp. When I was by myself, that was always the case. I never had any idea where I was going to camp. That's later on in this map making career. So anyway, that's kind of how we got started. And the way the map company came up is that we were cruising along a highway. It's 141 in western Colorado. It turns into Dolores Canyon. There's an incredible place out there called Gateway. Gateway is a village that was built by, I think, the guy that I can't remember. He started a television channel. Gosh, I can't remember that. But anyway, we were riding towards that town, and I was on this road, and there were no vehicles, no motorcycles, no cars, nothing. And it was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. The road wasn't what we call a G1. It wasn't one of the best roads that I've since been on. But at that time, I thought, how would people like me from Texas, Flatlanders, know that a road like this even exists? And then if they thought it existed, how would they find it? And that was my first inkling of making a map. So when we stopped at a place called Driggs Mansion, which is famous for some unknown reason. It's a rock structure off Highway 141, just sitting out there. And I don't know why it's famous. It looks like an old house, but anyway, it's well known. And we were sitting there, one of our stops, and I said, guys, what about a motorcycle map? Court, by the way, Court, the young Butler, had been looking for something to do. He was in the flooring business and he was looking for something different. Something had to do with motorcycles. And I just said, guys, how about a motorcycle map for guys like me? Where we put the roads on the maps we didn't know, I mean, it wasn't far enough along yet that we'd have different colors for different, types of roads. And I just thought that we would put like a gold color on top of the roads where they were really incredible. And that's where it started. That's where we got the idea. And by the end of that day, everybody was putting in ideas about how this could, what this could look like. And that's how we got started.
So you're a 55-year-old who'd never ridden before. All of a sudden you take this trip, this amazing trip through some incredible scenery, territory, some of which I've ridden. And then you go on this process. Once you determine you're going to make these maps, you go on this process of riding, 250,000 miles to make these maps. I mean, what was that like? And how was it just a scatter shot? Did you ride everything, or did you talk to locals? What was the process in actually making this idea? You want to make a map, but now it's like, oh shit, what do we do?
Well, there was a lot of input from everybody. And, but what we did, we decided we would ride pretty much every road, and that's impossible. But by the way, we were only doing paved roads, which helped a little bit.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of paved roads in pretty much every state. So we started with Colorado. We didn't really know that we would make more than one map. We didn't even know that we would end up making this map. We just thought we would. We would gather up this information and see if we could get it made. We didn't know if someone would help us make a map. How do you get it printed? All that.
Yeah.
So we didn't worry about the details too much. We just started riding roads and rating them. We came up with a rating system: G1, G2, and G3. G1 is the best. That's a road like Independence Pass in Colorado, Trail Ridge Road in Texas, down where I am, Twisted Sisters,
Yeah.
Tail of the Dragon, Pigtail, all these roads around the country. Those, they have to be incredible. And when I say incredible, there has to be elevation change, lots of turns, a sense of peril. That's part of it.
Oh, so you have a specific criteria?
Oh yeah.
So sorry, you started saying that. I love the sense of peril. That's fabulous. So if you overcook a turn, that's it. Yeah, I love that.
That is so true. And I guess we have had people use our G1 map to find roads to avoid. That, in other words, they're that, if they're not people that are experienced riding in the mountains or riding perilous roads. I've heard that a couple of times, and I think it's funny.
That's really funny. Yeah.
Have to find roads that they don't want to get on because they're too perilous. But all of them are that. You have to have a lot of elevation change, a lot of change of direction, and there has to be. You don't have to. We don't rate the scenery. The scenery comes with it. If you're on a road that's twisting and turning and going up and down,
we know what the scenery is like on a road like that.
Something caused it to be turning like that.
Like a mountain.
Yeah, there's a mountain there, or a river, and such as that. There's something going on there. Not many of the G1s are in solid woods. There are a few of them, but that would be like scenic, but the road wouldn't come up to our level as far as twisting this elevation change. Some of them in the mountains are in very wooded areas, and when you get into that, you're really in some excitement. Not only do you have twists, turns, all that, but you've got trees to avoid. So that's the best. G2 is a step down, but it's still incredible. I mean, a lot of times you'll be on a G2. If you haven't been on a G1, you'd be on one of our better G2s, and you'd say, so you're telling me a G1 is going to be better than this? And we say, yeah, it really is. And so that's the next level. As far as describing the difference between the two, it's just the turns are more gentle, the elevation change is less, right, and there's just less peril about it. The G2 is more like stuff you can rail, if you know what I mean by railing. You can go at it. That's where the guys on the sport bikes, any kind of a bike that will move, get with it.
Yeah.
And then there's the G3 is the least thrilling, perilous, but you think of a winding paved road through a wooded area by a creek or a river that just winds along and is beautiful, and you're glad to be there. You're really glad to be there. And so that's a G3. That's it. And it's we got it down to where if I rated a road G3, Cork would generally come. If he came along and looked at the same road, it would be the same rating. You know, it's all subjective, but it's still it's real when you get when you're using one of our maps. You can ride the roads, and you say these guys did this. They were definitely here. They rode this road.
So when you are rating these roads, I've got to believe that in the beginning, especially, you'd think a road was a G1, and then all of a sudden you'd find something better, and that road would then go to a G2. Is that correct? Did that ever happen?
Right. That's right. When we started, this was probably one of the most dangerous jobs you can imagine. I mean, it's all fun and exciting and all that, but we would ride along with these old Garmin devices, these yellow things that were made. God, it looks like they were made in World War II. And you know, you push a button and you have to put a code in. You know, if you want to say something, when we were putting information in, we'd put a waypoint down, and then we would have to write down what happened at that waypoint. And so we would put down some sort of a code like G2 turns to G1 at that waypoint. Then you go further down the road, and then it says G1 turns back to G2 here. It was unbelievable. And we were doing this while we were riding.
So you were
going down the road. We're putting this stuff. It's so ridiculous. We can't believe we were doing this. Can't believe it. Eventually, we made an app that where we just push buttons. That was a dream come true. Oh my God. You just push buttons. You know, there's a button G1, G2, and G3. You just push G1, or you know, whatever starts right there where you push. Usually you don't start with a G1. You have to work your way up to that. They usually don't just suddenly start, but you push G3. You know, it's a subtle road, and if it turns into something a little better, well, then you push G2, but you can come back and erase the G2 if it doesn't turn into enough of a G2.
I see.
We had all this figured out so that we didn't have to come back and ride the road again or anything like that. But it worked beautifully. When you get through with a day of riding, you could look at the map, and we had it figured out where we had the colors that eventually ended up on the printed maps would show up on our device. So we were looking at what eventually the map would look like, the actual map that day. It's like immediate gratification.
eBay has reinvented vehicle buying from click to curb. Everything's covered. It's all thanks to their new secure purchase. Ever try to buy a car and end up in a parking lot with a stranger and some blind trust? Or spend half the day at a dealership talking to pushy salespeople and signing paperwork? Or maybe, worst of all, waiting for hours at the DMV just to transfer the title? Well, that era is over. For years, eBay has been the go-to for gearheads, collectors, and do-it-yourselfers, because whatever you're into, from classics to SUVs to trucks to imports, eBay's got it. And now with secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your next ride, it's where you can buy it, start to finish. Sellers and titles are verified, paperwork is handled by experts, and payments are traceable and digital. So you know exactly who you're dealing with and exactly what you're getting. Plus, you can finance, insure, and register your vehicle all in one place. No more hours at the dealership, no more trips to the DMV. Get your vehicle plates and paperwork shipped to your door, ready to drive. And it's all part of one seamless process, designed to feel as easy as buying anything else online. And eligible vehicles purchased on eBay are backed by up to $100,000 in purchase protection. Thinking about selling your ride? Secure Purchase makes that simple too, because you know your buyer and their funds are verified. If you still own your car, the financing payoff is fully integrated, so you're not chasing paperwork or waiting on checks to clear. And with Secure Purchase, you get paid fast, and you're not going to be stuck chasing no-shows or answering the fifth, "Is it still available?" message. This is what modern car buying looks like. Skip the DMV, skip the sketchy meetups, buy it on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Did you ever have that circumstance where you talk to local riders and they'd say, "Oh, you got to ride this one. It's the best road you'll ever ride."
Sure.
And then you ride it and it's not even a G3?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hell, that happens all the time. I'm glad I don't have to run back into those same guys after I make the map, which is generally not. I don't, I did most of the riding for the maps uh, in total. Court, after we rode the first 5 states, which were the mountain states, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana, Fred and Court and I all rode all of those as a group. All three of us were together all the time, following riding. And then after that, Court was the talented one about making the maps. So he had to get into the office and start making maps. So I was the one riding most of the time.
So how long did this riding process? You said you started off with Colorado, your first map.
Mm-hmm.
How long was it? Months or years, or how long did it take to do the riding to then start to transform it into the map?
We started riding the mountain states, the 5 states, in 08, and we rode those in 08, 09, and maybe part of 2010. And in 2010 also we did Southern California, which was a monstrous task. Wow. But anyway, those maps we all printed, as I recall, we printed them about the same time. We did all the mountain states. What we considered the mountain states: Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana. I guess
Yes.
Maybe not including Arizona and New Mexico. And we did all of those and printed them all at once. That's the way I remember it. Even though Colorado was the first one we rode, we printed all the others at the same time. And we sold our first maps in 2010, around May of 2010. So that was the timeline. And Southern California was, I think we were printing that one maybe in late 2010, I think. They run together. We made a lot of maps in a short number of years there.
Did it ever get to the point, because this is a lot of riding, and I know that when I get exhausted or fatigued or I've just done too much, and it could be the best road in the world, and sometimes I'm just so tired that it doesn't really have an effect on me.
Right.
Because of the sheer amount of riding, did it ever get to the point where it just felt like going to work?
Well, it sometimes. I rode in all weather. I mean, people, well, you can't ride in all weather. You can't ride in snow. I rode in snow a lot. If the road wasn't frozen, below me, and I rode in rain. I never. If it was just raining, and that's the only problem with the weather, I got on that bike and rode no matter. And I had 6 sets of gloves. That was the thing that bothered me the most when I was riding, is my hands would get wet. And then
You and me both, yeah.
Because I was, this was in cold weather a lot of times too. It's not freezing, but your hands just get so cold and you can't really do things with your fingers and all. So I would take off a pair of gloves. If it was raining straight down, I would ride, but I would take a pair off and change gloves about every 30 minutes. So I could go for about 3 hours. And once I ran out of 6 pairs of gloves, I just had to park it I had to go somewhere and be done until I got the gloves dried out, which meant I would go to a laundromat generally and put them in the dryer and just let those things run. The rest of me wasn't wet. I had the climb gear, the full body thing. Unbelievable how dry I stayed in that outfit. I forget what it's called. It's a tan outfit. It's somewhere around here. It's amazing that you could go, just pouring rain and not get anything to speak of inside, maybe just a little bit around where it came in through around my collar, between the neck gaiter thing and my helmet.
Yeah.
But I was comfortable, but I didn't like to sit around. So I would, back to your question, do I ever get tired of riding? What I got tired of was if you were on roads going from one place that was good to another place that was good. I had to do a lot of that. That's deadheading, we called it. And you're just going like 150 miles from someplace in Oregon to someplace else.
Yeah.
To pick up a new area of riding, which, and along that route, there's nothing to rate because it's flat. We've already figured out how to look at maps. I used Google Earth a lot. I could just get into Google Earth and fly it and see, well, this is going to be a day where I just ride and think. I never wore any musical devices. I'm a dreamer. I could just dream going down the road. And I was pretty much dreaming while I was riding them too. I was in another space, another zone. I was zoned in or zoned out. I'm not sure which it is. I get on G2s and into G1s, and it was just a rhythm. And I was just pushing buttons, and I felt like I was fail proof. Hey, I said, if I hadn't turned this thing over yet, I don't think I will. I just kept going. So, but I've never been not enthused when I was on a G3 up to a G1. I've always loved that. So to answer that question, boy, I'm a long way from answering it short. I could, as long as I wasn't deadheading, I was loving it.
Let me be the devil's advocate for a moment. Now, someone could say, well, by doing something like this and following these maps, you take away the chance to stumble on a fabulous road. And I've done that. I'm sure. Well, you obviously have done it because you've ridden a lot more than I have. But there is that wonderful thing that happens when, and it's sort of expectation. What's the old saying? Expectation is the killer of joy. And I've stumbled on roads, and it'll be 50 miles of heaven, and you don't expect it. What do you say to those people who say, we should just be more adventurous and just go do it on our own and not rely on some Texan to tell me where to go?
When they get tired of that, they can come to us. That might talk them out of being a motorcycle rider.
The Lowdown Show is presented by adbrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. I'm going to put you on the spot, Scott. You've ridden a lot of roads in a lot of very appealing states.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't choose Texas Hill Country. I'm going to prevent you from saying that's your favorite because, of course, you're a Texan and everybody roots for their home state.
Yeah.
But is there a particular place in all this riding that really resonates with you? If somebody was going to fly to the U.S. from Germany or wherever, and we've got a week,
mm-hmm.
Where would you send them?
Well, a lot of your listeners will be turning their sets off right now when I say, how about Arkansas?
Arkansas, really?
Northwest Arkansas. I'm going to caveat that with just in its entirety. Arkansas is unbelievable, but it's Northwest Arkansas, and it's a smallish area. But you ask about areas in general. So east of Fayetteville, on our maps, we have what are called inset boxes. And the inset boxes, where there's a G1 road or a collection of G1 roads, we put a box around that, and then we put a big version of that on the back of the map that shows all of the terrain features and a lot of the coolness that you'll experience in a bigger version, a bigger format. So there's one box, it's inset box number 15. And if you turn it around on the back, you'll see this blown up version of this. And in that's the most G1s and G2s in a small area of like 50 by 70 miles, something like that.
Oh, so it's really small.
A huge number of G1s, particularly G1s, that's what everybody looks for, G2s, and some G3s. It's amazing. Almost every road in that 70 by 50 miles, that's very rare, is incredible. There's a town called Jasper, Arkansas, and there's not much to Jasper. It's tiny, but there's 5 roads that come into Jasper. Every one of them is amazing. It's like there's 3 of them are G2s, maybe 2 of them are G1s, but they're all incredible. So you come into Jasper, well, you might want to stay there. There's not very many places to stay. You might want to stay there for a few days because there's so much riding there. But now that your people are over that shock, Arkansas also they are such big fans of motorcycle riders. They got on board really early with motorcycle riding, and they have a lot to offer. So they made it publicly. They put out the word there. But the roads there are paved so well. You don't have all of the freezing weather, not as much cold weather as you do in a lot of these other places. Maintenance is excellent. My opinion was it's very good. In all of the areas where the roads are thrilling, the roads are very well paved. And that's a big deal because in the cold country, you have to kind of watch the pavement on some of these roads. But there's a lot of other great.
You don't need to tell me that, but yeah, I know the frost heaves do wreak havoc on pavement.
And then other areas that are just amazing are Southern Appalachia. Let's see. Well, everyone knows that Southern California and Northern California are incredible. There are actually more G1s in Northern California than Southern California.
Yeah,
I don't think people would think that. I think Southern California gets so much conversation, and it is incredible. But Northern California has more G1s than SoCal. And let's see. Idaho's an amazingly beautiful state. It's really beautiful. It's just, the mountains are softer. They're no more like grass-covered mountains. They're still mountains, but they're beautiful. And Utah, everybody knows it's incredible. Colorado, nothing beats Colorado. Can't beat Colorado. Western Colorado.
Yeah.
But individual roads, gosh, they kind of all blur to me. When somebody when I get in a conversation about one, I mentally go back there. And I mean, there's roads like Cherahalla in, I guess it's right at Tennessee and North Carolina, but it's just amazing. But it's so close to the tail of the dragon that people don't know it's there. I like it better than riding tail of the dragon because there's a lot less people doing, acting crazy on it. Cherahalla is just a smooth, cool ride. G1, amazing. And there's just a bevy of G1s in Asheville, North Carolina, and that area. Just an amazing number of G1 roads.
I've ridden around Asheville. There's a lot to love about Asheville. There's a great music scene there, and the culture scene, and a lot of great roads as well.
None of that do I ever experience, by the way. People ask me, boy, did you go to the Barber Museum, which is the big motorcycle thing?
Yeah.
I never, ever went to anything. Never did anything except ride and rate roads. That was all. And then at night, Court and I would talk about maps that we were making. That was all fun. But no, that was one of those things. The music and all that, I missed it all because I was very focused on getting these roads ridden so we could make a map.
And if you rode that much, you were exhausted and you had to get to bed.
Yeah, I was exhausted. I rode. I get up very early in the morning. 4:35. I would get up and I would look at Google Map. The Google Maps and what's it called? Google Earth and the other sources. A lot of maps. I carried tons of atlases with me, Benchmark and the Lorm. I'd have sometimes 16 of those. I know I had 16 at one time because all of them got ruined when my pannier during a rainstorm. I kept riding and I didn't have my pannier latched well enough. When I opened that thing, probably the next day, there was so much water in there and all of those things were ruined. So there's that's a lot of weight to carry around with you, by the way, 16, atlases. But anyway, that's what I would do. And my planning came in the morning. Then I'd get on the bike as soon as I could. Often sometimes you'd have frost on the roads early in the morning, some places. And you just can't ride a motorcycle with any frost on the road. If anybody out there is wondering about that, don't ride with frost on the road. It's slick. But by the time things warmed up, or it was light enough to ride, if it was warm, I was off to the races. And I rode at least 10 hours. It's rare that I rode less than, if I got into rain, I got all my gloves all wet, then I was through whenever that time came. But otherwise, I can ride a lot of miles in a day. And that's one reason I rode by myself. I didn't want anybody, saying, boy, I'm ready to stop. And I might want to stop. I just rode by myself most of the time after we rode those first 5 or 6 states.
So what's next for you? Are you still doing any riding? Are you still actively involved in creating maps?
No to both. I don't ride anymore. I have a little RV and I go do that more now. Crazy what I do a lot of. I'm a disc golfer. You know what disc golf is?
I do. A frisbee golf. Yeah, frisbee.
Frisbee golf, yeah. So a guy that's worked with us forever named Rob Watt. He's our photography guy, and he does all the photography work for Butler Maps. A lot of the covers and a lot of the photographs. He's an amazing photographer. But what he does is play more disc golf than any person I've ever known. He plays all the time. He's a motorcycle rider, of course. And so he's coming here in about a month. I just came back from there. We played for days in a row, all day, every day. So that's kind of one thing I do. And I still have a couple. I've got a business here in Waco. We remodel low-income housing, and I finance it and all this stuff. But that's pretty much what I do.
So your riding career was really only a decade or so, correct?
Yeah, it was. It was from 2008 till 2020. How long is that? That's about 12 years. That's about right.
Now, why did you stop riding? Were there other factors involved, or?
COVID came along. The last place I rode was Wisconsin, and I left my motorcycle parked. Got a Harley place up there, and they stored it. Kept the battery up. And COVID came along, and it just sat there for years because I didn't feel like flying up there and getting it and all that stuff. During the COVID thing.
Yeah.
And so I had pretty well wrapped up all the riding I was going to do. It just so happened that we had ridden everything in the U.S. that we thought we needed to ride as far as paved roads. And so Court and some guys went up there and they took some motorcycles and used my motorcycle also. And they rode what was left of Wisconsin, which was the north part of Wisconsin, and some of the other roads in that general vicinity. And those came, and then Court shipped my motorcycle back here to Waco, and I still have the motorcycle. It's in the storage building. The last one, I've had a bunch of them. Well, another thing, in 12 years, I had 8 BMW motorcycles. That's a bunch of them. Yeah. And I loved all of them. Most of them were BMW GSAs, but my favorite one was a K bike. It was a 2005 BMW K, was an LT, one of the heaviest motorcycles ever made. I didn't love that part, but it's heavier than most of the Honda, the big gold wings and all.
Yeah,
Monsters.
yeah.
I love that thing. But I rode and rated roads on that bike. That thing's been in some places it shouldn't have been. Going to campsites and things. I didn't try to do that. That's just the way it worked out. But anyway, that was that.
eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. Ever try to buy a car online and end up in a parking lot with a stranger and some blind trust? Well, that era is over. Now, with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery. It's all built in. This is the modern way to buy your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Thank you for listening to The Lowdown Show.